Good evening. Good evening. I know you're there. I can hear the...
Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States. We will, of course, retain the White House with the election of Hillary Clinton. I believe we will gain the United States Senate. It will be close. I am a progressive Democrat in the Congress, and I'm never good enough for the far left.
Why is it so hard to get a company to execute that competently?
I don't know. And as one who works very hard...
How do you not know?
Well, it's not my responsibility. It's about choice. If you like what you have and you want to keep it, you have the choice to do that.
Are you accountable for saying something that turned out not to be correct?
Well, it's not that it's not correct.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
Well, there's a lot of hoop-de-doo and ado about what's happening now. Very appropriate.
I get your point, but your point isn't well taken, if I may be so bold as to suggest.
Aren't you getting a little old, Mitch? Shouldn't you step aside? Have you ever asked him that question? Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi. Why aren't we talking about something else?
There's an unborn baby with a human heart and a human liver, a human being.
Yeah. Why don't you take your ideological questions? I don't know who you are. I think I know more about this subject than you. I'm not going to have this conversation with you because you obviously have an agenda. Anybody here have a smartphone? In this smartphone, almost everything came from federal investments. But I think almost everybody I know cannot live without having a paycheck on time. Members of Congress, even.
I said Tina.
Let's for a moment honor it as a legitimate question. Although it's quite offensive, but you don't realize that, I guess. Excuse me. We don't have the gavel.
Certainly not Nancy Pelosi, who says the name Gruber does not ring a bell.
I don't know who he is. He didn't help write our bill. And so it brings down rates. I don't know if you have seen Jonathan Gruber of MIT's analysis. Next.
Leader Pelosi.
But let's just back up from, with all due respect to the speaker, that what he said is not the gospel truth. The fact is that a lot of the spending increases came during the Bush administration. 2 unpaid-for wars that we got ourselves engaged in, a prescription drug plan that added enormous amounts to our spending, and the tax cuts for the high end that did not create jobs and create revenue coming in. Yes, we had the Recovery Act, which saved or created 3.5 million jobs. You know, the record of job growth in the private sector has been consistent for many record number of months. So it isn't as much a spending problem as it is a priorities, and that's what a budget is, setting priorities.
You talk about growth. Even Christina Romer, the former head of the Council of Economic Advisors for the President, says you increase taxes, that also hurts growth.
Well, it's about timing. It's about timing, and it's about timing as to when you make cuts as well.
The fiscal cliff, you raised taxes $650 billion right away.
Yeah, and that was a very good thing to do on people making over the high end in our population. Nothing brings more money to the Treasury of the United States than investment in education of the American people. So it is almost a false argument to say we have a spending problem. We have a budget deficit problem that we have to address.
The top 1%, top 1% pay 37% of all federal income taxes. The top 5% pay 59% of all federal taxes. If you took the total income of everyone making more than $1 million a year, if you taxed it all at 100%, that's only $726 billion, which is less than the projected deficit for this year. I mean, the bottom line, Congresswoman, is you can't raise taxes enough to solve the deficit problem.
Nobody is saying that. We're saying it has to be balanced. We avow the First Amendment. We stand with that and say that people have a right to have a gun to protect themselves.
said yesterday we did not have the majority, but we have the gavel. Excuse me. We don't have the gavel. We don't have the... We have our own gavel. We just couldn't be prouder. I believe that it's a winner. And by the way, it's called the Affordable Care Act. It's called the Affordable Care Act. I know you didn't intend any compliment or derogatory, but it's called the Affordable Care Act. Affordable. Good. Affordable. There's a reason. Affordable. 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 Wow.
Every month that we do not have an economic recovery package, 500 million Americans lose their jobs.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
New details tonight on an epic incident in Congress involving House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Republican Congressman Tom Marino.
In 2009 and 2010, they had the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they knew this problem existed. They didn't have the strength to go after it back then, but now are trying to make a political issue out of it now.
Gentlemen, we'll
yes,
continue.
It is true. I did the research on it. You might want to try it. You might want to try it, Madam Leader.
And it didn't stop there. As the congressman walked away, Congresswoman Pelosi stormed across the aisle again, waving her finger. Watch and listen. Even fellow Democrats appear surprised.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Washington, Adam Smith.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
What is she doing?
What was she doing? Well, now on a primetime exclusive, Pennsylvania Congressman Republican Tom Marino joins us live. Good to see you, Congressman.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so I got to ask you, you're up there, you're making your remarks. Were you sort of surprised about her approaching and what was happening?
I wasn't surprised, but it's just a breach of protocol. I have never seen it, and my colleagues told me they have never seen it. But look, anything she does will not surprise me anymore.
She was clearly upset, and I understand this conversation continued. Can you tell us about any further words that were between the two of you after what we saw there? Sure.
When she came over the first time, she called me a liar. You're a liar. This isn't true. And you heard what I said about, look, I was a prosecutor for 18 years, so I did my research, did my homework, and told her about that and said to her that you might want to try that.
Well, I got to ask you this. Her office says that she was just coming to remind you that House Democrats had passed the DREAM Act. Obviously, you were saying that Democrats controlled everything, House, Senate, and White House, and didn't get this done. Her office says that she simply wanted to remind you that House Democrats had acted, and they also say that she accepts your apology. Yeah. But was there one?
No. First of all, if she wanted to remind me, she could have asked me to yield, to respond, to make a statement. She could have asked for more time on the floor. She didn't. She just simply was losing it. And when I finished and said, you know, I must have struck a nerve here, then she came back and followed me up and said that I was insignificant.
What was the context
insignificant. Of that? She looked very bizarre, very angry, to the point where she just said, you are insignificant. And, you know, I can take that. As I said, I was a prosecutor for 18 years. I was threatened by drug dealers, murderers, and organized crime. This was a walk in the park. I just suggested to her that we go off the floor, and so there wasn't a scene. And again, she told me I was insignificant. She's telling really my people in my district they're insignificant. She's telling the American people who aren't royalty, because there is a fair number of people who act like royalty, and that was a primary example of it. And I just simply said, you're acting arrogant, and let's discuss this. And then she was escorted off the floor by the sergeant at arms. And
comes down to is there's two types of people in the world, those who are most afraid of terror, those who are most afraid of global warming. Now, you can put me in the terror camp. I can't worry about the earth right now. I'm too worried about the world. And the thing that worries me the most in the world is radical Islam, obviously, and increasingly, might I add, moderate Islam, because I'm starting to wonder when you guys are going to declare a fatwa on the assholes within your own organization, all right? Now listen up, Care, and everybody out there. I don't have any problem with your faith. I don't even know that much about it. I wouldn't know what the fuck Episcopalians did either. It's time for you to start tightening up your own shit. We can't do it. We can't sit in with you because we look like Johnny Winter with the Wu-Tang Clan. Because, like I said, most of us don't care about your faith. We don't have an axe to grind with your faith. But we are starting to bridle at how you treat your women. I don't like how you fucked up Cat Stevens. And you know something? Now, as far as this mosque at Ground Zero, can they build it? Of course you can. You know you can. Should you? You know you shouldn't. It's bad manners. It is bad manners for you to do that there because of the people who died there. And we don't trust the guy who fronts that movement down there, Imam Celine Dion's husband, or whatever the hell his name is. And now we're going to let Iran get nuclear weapons? Iran? Are you kidding me? You ever see the stock footage of them walking around their nuclear plant? Look on the walls over their shoulders and note the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey poster. Christ. You know what's going to happen here. Netanyahu, who lost his brother at Entebbe, is going to go so far, and then he's going to put the big portobello over Iran. And guess what? Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to back his play. Now, listen, do I understand everything about the Jews? No, of course I don't. I'm not of the faith, and I sometimes wonder, why did Israel choose to set up shop in the one place in the entire fucking neighborhood that doesn't have oil 4 feet under the surface? The Jews. But what do you think Israel's thinking when they see our president say that NASA, our space program, their main goal is Muslim outreach? You see these parades in Iraq and Iran on a daily basis, these madmen with their faces all covered, burning our flag, burning effigies. Does it look to you like space travel's a prereq for them? You see any rocket scientists in those parades? Muslims will want to go to the moon when the Jews set up Israel there. We got to start speaking candidly to each other about this shit, or we're going to get blown up again. We've got to use our heads. Of course, Guantanamo Bay has to stay open. And I think Obama knew that, too. And thank God, thank you, Mr. President, for keeping it open. Now, let's think twice about bringing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed here to be tried on Judge Judy, okay? Guantanamo Bay works. You know, I've been down there to perform for the troops. It works like a Swiss watch. Now, to go down there, first off, you have to fly around the island and come in the backside. Castro won't let you fly over the island proper because, God forbid, we see some of their jet age secrets. So you're flying around the back of the island, you bank out of the clouds, you come into Guantanamo Bay. There it sits, the most beautiful soccer field you've ever seen in your life. All these guys out there in the afternoon playing soccer. I talked to the chef on the island. He tells me that the average weight gain for all the detainees is 20 pounds over the course of their stay there. What sort of cosmic bunny hole have we fallen through? Our fucking enemies are gaining weight. Now they want to bring them back here, but guess what? The terrorists won't come to certain places here. Their lawyers have stipulated they won't go to Leavenworth, Kansas, because there's no on-site medical facility at the prison there. Thank God somebody's thinking. The prisoners are bridling because they don't want to get there, and each year they have to all pile into the Westphalia van and head into downtown Topeka to see old Doc Johnson for their physical. Hey, Doc, this is Ramses. He took his eye out with a spork because he saw a chick's ankle. Can you patch him up? What kind of coverage you have, son? Blue Cross Blue Scimitar? Let me get an indent on that car. He was never going to get rid of the Patriot Act either. You know why? We can't. Because you can say anything when you're running for president, and then you get in there and you got to get serious. They allow you to do two things the first day you're president. First, you're allowed to give a titty twister to the alien corpse from Roswell. And then they open up the, hey, here's how really fucked up it is binder. And at that point, you get serious about shit like the Patriot Act and Guantanamo Bay, and we have to. We've got a perfect storm brewing now. You know that. We are not at our best at this moment. We have turned into a mincing, politically correct Leviathan, and our enemies are truly primitives. I have a friend who's a realtor in Tehran at an organization called Century 4, and he... He told me the only reason we're not all decapitated is because we've got our heads up our asses. And we have for around 30 years now, starting with Jimmy Carter, who pushed us down this road. And the rest of the roster over there is looking pretty shaky, too. Joe Biden, there's sometimes he's so off the rails, I can't tell if he's crazy or I actually like him. All I know is that when somebody was putting those hair plugs in, corkscrewing them into the front of his head, they severed a discernment lobe because this guy has no parking brake. Barney Frank, huh? Wow. Here's a cute story. You know, when Barney's boyfriend ran the male prostitution service out of his condominium way back when you called in to procure services from the boyfriend, the code you had to use over the phone, people were listening, to tell them whether or not you were submissive or dominant was, in fact, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Is that unbelievable? Oh, huh? Yeah. And that brings us to my personal favorite, Cruella Demented. The great Nancy Pelosi. The whistle on that train of thought, barely audible off in the distance. You know, the best nickname for her is a caller to my Westwood One radio show called in, and her name is Ann, Ruth Ann from North Carolina. I wanted to get the name right because it was so brilliant that I have to share it with you. She thinks that Pelosi is a Bond villain, and she calls her Pelosi Galore. Perfect. Oh, Ruthie, I wish I had thought of that doll, but what is it that bugs me about Pelosi? She always looks like she's perpetually witnessing the docking of the Hindenburg in Lake She always looks like she's pulling 7 Gs in a wind tunnel test or something. Can you believe she was actually the Speaker of the House of Representatives? It's unbelievable. Every time she opens her mouth, I shake my head so rapidly you could blend paint colors in my mouth. I'm going to miss her once a year at the State of the Union. That was my favorite night when she'd sit there over the president's shoulder. Have you ever seen anybody put that much thought into doing absolutely nothing? She would sit there alternatingly blinking like the Yul Brynner robot on a rainy day at Westworld, and then she'd go dead-eye like the shark eating Robert Shaw in Jaws, and then she'd hit the power on the twitch rate again, go back up. What is that twitch rate? It makes a hummingbird's wings look positively glacial. Did you hear her opening statement at the Obamacare summit? She sounded like Professor Irwin Corey explaining the infield fly roll in Farsi while under the influence of an amyl nitrate ampule. Nancy Pelosi is thicker than a Charlie Sheen prenup. And she is crazy, batshit crazy. I guarantee you that woman sleeps upside down.
Go.